97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher, powered by InsideTheBirds.com.
We expect to win every time we step on the field. That's just the mindset that we have.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Some interesting stuff around the NFL that just came out in the last hour regarding potential fans in the stands or not having fans in the stands. We'll bring Geoff Mosher in for that. I want to get into some Jamal Adams stuff that he is pontificating about at InsideTheBirds.com as he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. But first, the Powder Blue podcast tonight with Frank and Jeff. Baseball is back, and I know you were kind of like, I don't need 50 games. Did you change your opinion on that, man?
Not really. I mean, I feel like we were headed in that direction over the last 5 or 6 days anyway, so I'm mentally prepared for it. I think it'll be a different experience, Mike. I like that they did keep normal divisional play because that, to me, makes it more like a little bit like an NFL season where if it's only going to be 50 games and you're playing or 60 games, and you're playing 40 of them against the teams you normally play in your division, I think that adds a lot of excitement. It makes every series that they're going to wind up playing that much more important than, say, you can lose in June or July a 3-game series to a division opponent and make up for it down the road. No, not a big deal. This does make it more exciting.
DH guy or don't care or no DH guy?
Not a DH guy, but I knew it was coming. I'm way less upset about the DH than that ridiculous extra innings rule about starting with a runner on second base.
All right. Well, I we'll see. I mean, spring training's in a week. I was the same way. I was kind of like, I don't really care if there's baseball because there's playoff basketball and Stanley Cup hockey, and then training camps. Baseball is going to kind of get lost in the sauce. But there was a little part of me that was like, yeah, I'm kind of intrigued. 60 games, they all matter. We'll see what happens once I sit down. And my biggest problem with baseball is I just don't enjoy the game, like today's game. I just don't like the style of baseball right now. That's my bigger problem with baseball. That's something that I don't know that they can fix if I sit in front of the television, even though they're the only game in town on for a week.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, there are a lot of people who are already starting to jump off the bandwagon just because of the way the game is played, and obviously the labor dispute that's gone on over the last 2 or 3 weeks with it might keep those people off the bandwagon and say, I just don't even want to get back in for 50 games when I don't love the product that much to begin with. And that'll be interesting with football, Mike. I mean, everybody loves football, so they don't have to have a fear as much. But, there's a chance that the product, and people have complained about the product over the last few years, whether it's tackling and things like that. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see what kind of product we're going to get into.
All right, let's get into some quick football stuff. John Arand from the Sports Business Journal and Ben Fisher reporting that the first 6 to 8 rows in every NFL stadium will be off limits to fans this year, covered with a tarp that will have sponsored logos that will be able to be seen on TV. Is this the first kind of admittance by the NFL that we may not have stadiums with fans in them, and they are already preparing for it by doing stuff like this?
Yeah, that would be the first indication, although you can make the argument that the first indication is everything that we've seen happen with other sports or with guys already testing positive or with the protocols that they're going to implement for even training camp or what they've already done with canceling spring camps and a lot of coaches not going back. I mean, I feel like there's a logical flow of caution being taken here with the NFL, and obviously if that's what they're doing for the first I'd like to read a little bit more onto that. I mean, does that mean they're planning to have fans in the stands, just not that close, spaced out? Or to me, this is all part of the idea of having some fans in the stands if they can, but I'm not 100% sure they're still going to be able to do that. This is just step one toward that goal.
How about the report saying that some cities could have fans depending on the state guidelines? And that means some cities could have more fans than others. Some cities could have 0 fans while the other city has thousands of people in the arena. I mean, it kind of makes no sense considering that when they were talking about coaches returning to their facilities, they had to wait for all states to open. So it's just crazy to think that this is even a discussion.
Yeah, and remember about the equity rule and the competitive balance rule about, some teams not – you have some teams have their mini camps and other teams not. So everything had to be the same. I don't understand how that's consistent with this, where how could you have one home team having a lot of fans, another team having none, and say that there is competitive balance? To me, that's I mean, I know that everybody wants to make as much money as possible and have as much gate receipt as possible and at least have some kind of look like there are people in the stands rooting on. I know that's good for the sport, but I do think they really have to weigh competitive balance here and how much fans matter. In football, I think fans do matter, and we talk about that in some sports it's not as big of a deal, in other sports it is. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any outcry or if there's backlash from, some of the teams or all the teams, depending on which ones have no fans and which ones do.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. You wrote recently about this Jamal Adams situation over at Inside the Birds, and I'm interested. We hear this list comes out, and obviously the Eagles land on that list. And, is this a case of him trying to force the Jets into something that they clearly don't want to do? In other words, do you see the Jets calling his bluff here and just holding on to him, or do you think the Jets now look at those teams and start making phone calls and see what is out there now that the dust has settled a little bit and we haven't heard much on this? What is kind of the follow-up to that now?
Yeah, so this is like a two-part story. There's the part on Jalen Adams' part, and it certainly seems like he's trying to borrow from the playbook that Jalen Ramsey used to get out of Jacksonville. Jacksonville made that happen. However, if you look at what Yannick Ngakoue has done, same team with Jacksonville, he's tried to take a page from that playbook, and it hasn't worked for him. Jacksonville is essentially, I don't want to call this bluff, but maybe they haven't gotten an offer that they think is worth it, and they're going to go ahead right now, it appears, with Yannick Ngakoue on the team. And I think that's what the Jets are going to do. The Jets have a lot of control from a contract standpoint over him, at least 2 years and possibly 4, if they really want them to get crazy. With the franchise tag, they have time to decide, to at least change his mind. Maybe they start winning games. And they'll deal with the public backlash that Jamal Adams is lashing out right now because they can. It doesn't really hurt them. People talk about it, just like with Ngakoue in Jacksonville. But at the end of the day, one player has a lot of makes a big stink. If he shows up and reports to play, which he needs to do to make any money, then the Jets will be happy. So I think that they're happy to, like you said, call the bluff, ride it out, take the hit now for the benefit of having him on the team and trying to build up around him over the next year or two.
Well, it's funny because if he does decide he doesn't want to play, and I guess he doesn't get paid, he's only making about $750,000. I know the common guy out there is saying what, but $750,000. I guess even though he hasn't made a whole heck of a lot of money over his career, he might be willing to prove a point over $750,000.
Well, that would be one heck of a stance to take. I mean, Le'Veon Bell was already a millionaire before he did it. I can't imagine that Jamal Adams is really going to sit out and lose even that little money. Comparatively speaking, I'd be surprised if he sat out and took that kind of stand. I think he's doing everything possible to get out now, but it's not going to work, and eventually he's going to have to just deal with it.
Considering Malcolm Jenkins left, Mills and Parks are on a 1-year deal, McLeod is a 2-year deal. Is it reasonable for the Eagles to look this way and make a trade if possible?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to try to get him if he was attainable, but, not to give up 2 first-round picks, and then on top of that, make him the highest-paid safety in the game, and that's probably what's going to keep him from being moved, what you have to give up to get him. So he's a great player. I'm not saying anything, but look, there's a lot of guys from that draft class, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Alvin Kamara, who just haven't signed extensions yet.
Yeah, and it's weird because everybody, you see Jamal Adams and what you would have to give up to get him. Number one, what is your anticipation of what you would have to give? And would you or Howie Roseman theoretically be willing to say, hey, yeah, we're willing to give a first-round pick and then potentially a player. I've heard people throw out, one of your tight ends. I know, Broge, you even hypothetically said, I would trade Miles Sanders to get him here. That's how good some people. So if you had to give up a really good player, does any of that even make any sense, the trade matchup?
No, I would go back to why would you strengthen one area to weaken another? Why would you trade Miles Sanders and leave yourself in the same position you've been for the last few years, looking for that 3-down franchise running back, just to bring in a safety? Now you're strong at safety, but you're weak at running back. And the same thing with tight end. You might say, yeah, you've got two really good tight ends, but the Eagles have proven nothing at wide receiver. They've needed those two tight ends. They are a two tight end offense for the last few years. So trading one of them for Jamal Adams, yeah, now you've strengthened your safety position. You only have one good tight end, so you better hope those receivers are all really good and that Zach Ertz stays healthy, assuming Ertz is the one that stays, or whichever one. You better hope that one tight end stays healthy, or then you're in a lot of trouble.
Just to defend my Miles Sanders take here a little bit, I just think the nature of the running back position is a little bit easier to find another guy than a safety position. And I'm not a big paying the running back kind of guy. So when we talk about down the road needing to pay Miles Sanders, I'd be a little, I'd be worried a bit to pay a running back a lot of money. So that's kind of why I said Miles Sanders as a hypothetical, even though I understand that the Jets do have a running back over there that they probably don't need another one as well.
Yeah, perfect example. You just answered your own question. And one of the reasons, would Miles Sanders get it done? Probably not, because why would they want a running back? They want either picks or a player at a premier position like corner or pass rusher. That's what the Jets need more than anything else. So that's what throws water on the whole discussion anyway, because they probably wouldn't be asking for Miles Sanders in a deal.
Yeah. All right. Sports Bash Football at 4. Geoff Mosher here. Before we let you run here on this Football at 4, you look at this whole Jamal Adams, and you hear people trying to do this all the time. Do you think with what's going on now, how I guess like those post June 1st cuts and the train, like, have we not heard a lot about people getting cut or a lot of transactions because of? Do you anticipate that you're going to see a lot of roster movement? Once July kind of gets around and you start to see these teams getting ready for camp, or do you think that's not going to be as prevalent?
I think teams are going to see what they have right now, wait it out, try to manage through, evaluate how they're able to play and practice with COVID hanging in the balance. And then if they need something, you always see at the end of camp, people pick up players here and there. But I don't see any rash or major moves until at least at that point, the end of camp, when teams are a little bit more confident going into the season, that they know there's going to be a season and that there's a plan and that they can go ahead and spend some money or acquire a player if they need to.
Because there has been talk about possibly limiting, less than 90 bodies being at training camp, right?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about so many different things, from roster sizes to how they're going to all be together. And so I just think that right now you're not seeing a whole lot, including the signing first-round picks, until players get to the facility.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com, as obviously we are counting down to training camp, which is supposed to be right around that last week of July, which is also supposed to be when the baseball season starts. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Moshe, take care, pal.
See you guys.
All right, he broke down a couple of things on that Jamal Adams. He said don't want to weaken one to strengthen the other. We kind of went back and forth. See, I would trade, I think, one of the tight ends.
You would?
I think I might. Because his scenario didn't sell me enough. Well, if you lose one of your tight ends, then you're really – no, I still have one that's really good. But if he got hurt, yeah. But now I have him healthy and Jamal Adams. I'm not really weakening myself other than I'm weakening myself that I don't have two guys. I've now taken an embarrassment of riches, cut it down, and got a safety.
I would not be upset with Ertz. If I had the package of Ertz and Adams or Goddard and Adams, I'm still very excited. I just think I would rather have Ertz and Goddard. But I'm not mad if you told me that we have one of the tight ends and Adams on top of that.